Hello there, my name is Aaron, aka That History Guy 97, and today I will be beginning my first series on Epic European History, or Epic European History, Part 1, which is circa 3000 BCE to 44 BCE. And what I will be doing in this series is I'll be pretty much repeating my European History course. It's an AP class, and I want to teach all of you all the things I learned. So I will be pretty much studying and teaching at the exact same time. Without any further ado, let's get right into this. So we're going to start with Near East and ancient Mesopotamia. So the Near East includes Egypt, the Jews, and the Phoenicians. And Egypt was a healthy, advanced society. They lived in an area which is rich in natural resources called the Nile River Delta, that area in green on the left map, in the northern part. And they had one little problem. They stopped inventing after a while. And one of the reasons, which I'll talk about a lot in this series, is that they were not invaded very often. They were very comfortable with their lifestyle. And then the Jews, they were originally called Hebrews, and they lived in Palestine, which is modern-day Israel. And they developed the first monotheistic religion. They wrote down scriptures, which is now called the Tanakh of the Torah, and they also have the Dead Sea Scrolls and many others. But they are the second most literary advanced community in this time, except for the Phoenicians, who were north of the Jews, and they had no crop room. It was all hilly land. But they invented the first alphabet, which is only vowels. However, it was not the first writing system. Mesopotamia, on the right map, was on the far east end of this spectrum, and Mesopotamia literally means the land between two rivers. These two rivers, the northern one and the southern one, are called the Tigris and Euphrates respectively. And they were always being invaded in Mesopotamia. This led to so many technological advancements because there was just so much area that they needed to improve because they were constantly invaded. These improvements for their time included iron, the wheel, the chariot, and so many more. Also, concepts of power emerged in this time in the Near East, but they continue throughout history to emerge and keep on coming. So, there are two types of power. There's power to govern, which is power to make, enforce, and interpret laws, such as, well, our three branches of government, of course, in the United States. And then totalitarian is civil power is the right that people have as individuals. And there are two types of power that have to do with this time period. One is authoritarian, which is when one person holds all governing power. And then totalitarian, which is the abuse of authoritarian, so when they overuse their all governing power. And there are four vocab words I need you guys to know. One is primogeniture, which means power passed by oldest son to eldest son, which pretty much is like most European dynasties in the Middle Ages and even today. Then a dynasty is a ruling family, like I just said, I'm pretty sure, and it's controlled by primogeniture. So it's like pretty much the Hanover dynasty in Europe, in Britain, which is King George I, King George II, King George III. It gets very repetitive. But each one is the oldest son or the closest thing to the oldest son of the first of the one before them. And the aristocracy of a society is the upper social class, and it's usually based on birth, almost always, as you'll see in ancient Rome. Excuse me. And the monarchies, are a form of government where the head is a king or a queen. A regent, however, is a person who rules in name of someone unable to rule. Like, they're too young, or they're a nutcase, like we'll see in most countries. But, like, Louis XIV, when he was a little kid, he had Cardinal Richelieu, which we'll talk about in a little while. Now we're going to go to ancient Greek history. So the truth, I've actually been to Greece. It was very nice. So, here we're going to start. They are kind of the fringe of civilization. They have no rivers, etc. They're very mountainous. But they have so many city-states. There's Athens. They have the first democracy. There's Sparta. The best army, kick-butt military. But there were a bunch of Persian wars. And from 492 to 479, they were started by Darius, who was the emperor of the Persians. And he invaded with a huge army in 490. And that was at the Battle of Marathon. And it was a complete disaster for the Persians, actually. And the and they outnumbered the Athenians 4-1, and the Athenians actually beat them. They kicked their butts because they had this awesome battle formation. Then Darius was succeeded by Xerxes, who decided that that his dad was an epic screw up completely. So he raised the biggest invasion army until D-Day in 1944. It was just completely huge, and Greece had no plan. And this was about 480s, and so they had to come up with something, and they had a terrible evacuation plan. So they send through. So Sparta was having a celebration the weekend that Persia was supposed to come, and Athens had sent a few soldiers, but then Sparta said, "We'll go up, but we can only send 300, which we want to please the gods." So they sent 300 Spartans to hold battle, and the rest is history. It's 300 the movie in a nutshell. And the Persians, they burned Athens because they pretty much killed the last 300, even though they stood there for a week fighting off 100,000 at least Persians. And then they stopped at Salamis and Plataea. The Persian Wars actually ended because their navy was completely destroyed by Athens later. Then comes the Age of Pericles, the high point in Athenian democracy. It was the most inclusive ancient government. It's actually very close to what many societies are today. They had many cultural contributions, like plays, like Thespis, and God, I can't remember, Herodotus, who was a historian. He wrote down many historical documents, and art was very popular. And then right after this, in about 431 BCE, came the Peloponnesian War. It was Athens versus Sparta. It's pretty much all good things come to an end. And 431 to 404, it was Greeks versus Greeks. It was like a civil war. And there's another fear after the war that Persia would strike again. So came the rise of Macedon and Alexander the Great. Philip II in 336 BCE, he died. And he made the Macedonian army much better than it was, though, before he did. And he tried to get Athens and Greece to ally. Athens and rest of Greece, excuse me. So Demosthenes, the leader of Athens, hated Philip II. And Philip was just annoyed. And so Philip conquered Greece in 338 BCE. So Alexander the Great is the son of Philip II, who took power at the age of 20 years. He decided to get rid of Persia once and for all. Attacks in 334. Never lost a battle, not once. This is an entire battle route on the screen. He conquers Babylon, and he dies there at the age of 33 of some random disease that I don't know. In 323 BCE, he dies. Wherever he went, he spread Greek culture, though. He always brought a copy of the Iliad and the Odyssey with him. And it was just crazy. And he went all over Persia. He conquered the entire Persian Empire within 10 years, which is a huge feat. But he had no heir. So a civil war came around. And broke into 3 parts, and different like generals ruled. Rome! Here we go. So Rome sits on 7 hills, the city at least. And it's on the banks of the Tiber River. The Republic lasts from 500s of BCE to about 44 BCE, which is where we're going to stop. And the Senate is the main power here. But they pretty much stole Greek culture, which is kind of funny. And they pretty much stole Greek art, Greek plays, and pretty much said they were their own. And also Greek institutions. But they had a huge Mediterranean empire. This is their empire at about 117 BCE, at the height of CE, at the height of Trajan's reign. And Carthage was pretty much the main nemesis. And Carthage was on the northernmost tip of Africa, which is right near Sicily on the left. And during the Roman Carthaginian expansion in about 200s BCE, there's no compromise over the land of Sicily, so there's a war. And this was the First Punic War from 264 to 241 BCE. And they negotiated a treaty. And there was a normal treaty, a written treaty. And Hamilcar Barca, who is the father of Hannibal, which we'll talk about in 1 second, really became famous in this war, and that really brought his family together. And the funny thing about Hannibal is he's so famous because he just hated Rome with a burning passion. So his dad, there's a story that his father hung him over a set of burning coals that was actually meant for a pit for sacrificing animals. And he said, "What is the thought that is coming in your head?" He hung by his feet. He said, "I hate Rome." So he pretty much wanted to destroy Rome and burn it to the ground and take it as his own. So in 218, Carthage invades Italy Carthage invades Italy with elephants, and they go all the way over the Alps. You've probably heard this story before. In 216, the Battle of Cannae happened, and it's pretty much called an onion battle because and it was 80,000 Romans dead. It was the worst single-day military battle in ancient history. And Rome was undefended, the city. So they sent everyone back. Hannibal overestimated Rome. He didn't think they would let them just leave without defenses. So Rome decided to take on guerrilla warfare and left the city. And they cornered Carthage somehow, as he pretty much stuck himself in the heel of Italy's boot, so to speak. And they won. They pretty much took and Rome pretty much took pot shots at him. And while Hannibal was stuck, this guy named Scipio Africanus, he pretty much ran to Carthage, who's a Roman general, and burned it to the ground. There's a third Punic War. I know! Sorry. And in the Punic Wars, they is finished. And then there's another one in 148 BCE, if I remember correctly, and Carthage just burned. And here we go. Last slide. Gaius Julius Caesar, 100 to 44 BCE was his life. He conquered Gaul in the 50 BCE. And then he was part of the Senate. This is a picture pretty much of his death. But he called himself dictator for life. And he, in 48 BCE, he pretty much said, okay, it's my world. I'm going to do whatever the heck I want with it. So he became ruler of Rome because everybody loved him. So 4 years later, on the Ides of March 44 BCE, 22 people stabbed him each once. And Julius Caesar is pretty much based on this. And then we're going to continue next time. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.